Let's look at some formatting options in Excel, and to do so we have this data here that is not in a great format, but we'll walk through some options to make it look a little bit better. Most of your basic formatting can be found on the Home tab of the ribbon in these sections right here. So let's take a look at some of the options that we have. In this font section, you can change things all related to the font, obviously. So if you click this arrow right here, you can change the font that you have. We'll leave it as is. Here you can change your font size. And these buttons right here change your font size as well. We'll change this to 14. You can make your font bold, italics, or underlined. And you can see the shortcuts here, Control B, Control I, and Control U. We'll make this bold because it's a title. And then here you can add options for borders. In our example here, we want to have a total border right here. So we can click down on this to get all the border options. And we'll do a top border right there so that it shows up. You'll notice that there are lots of border options, including some border styles. You can click this More Borders button, and it brings up the Format Cells dialog box where you can select even patterns and then create borders based on what you want. You can select a different color and then even have these buttons over here to change your border. So obviously that looks a little weird, but that shows you a little bit more about the border option. We'll undo that change. And then over here is where you can fill in cells. So we'll select these headers right here and we'll maybe color them so that they're a little bit different. You can also change your font color. So we'll change that to white. And then in the alignment section, it does what you would expect. You can change the alignment. For example, we'll want to center these titles right here. You can do left and right or center. And then these buttons right here determine top, middle, or bottom alignment. That really works when you have a cell with some text that's bigger. So we'll just come in here and increase the size of the cell. So this is bottom alignment, so basically it's going to stay on the bottom. Middle alignment, it would center within that row, and then top, it's going to put it at the top. Over here you've got some orientation options where you can change the angle that your text is at. To be honest, I don't use this very much, but sometimes depending on what you're presenting, you may find this helpful. You can format cell alignment here and get different options as well. We'll just change that back to where it was. And these buttons right here are really helpful in presenting data. They increase or decrease alignment. So if we wanted to add a little bit of an indent to this table, you could click this increase indent button and you can increase the indent a lot or a little and go back and forth on those. Sometimes I'll see people put spaces at the beginning of words to create those levels. That usually tends to mess up spreadsheets, so using these indent buttons is really useful. The wrap text button does what you would expect. So if we type something really long in a cell, it will continue to go into another cell, but if we type something else, it's going to cut off that text right there. Wrap text just means if it doesn't fit within the width of the column, then it will put it to another line. So that's something that may be useful depending on your data as well. And finally, in this alignment section, we have this merge and center button. So if we wanted to center this title over our cells, you could click that merge and center button, and that creates one cell and centers the text. One note of caution with merging cells, it tends to create issues when you are using formulas or referencing columns that are part of the merge. So if we wanted to sum up all of column E, if we select all of column E, because row 1 is merged, it's going to select all of A through E. You can obviously come here and change it, and it would be just fine, but it's a little annoying that whenever you select those rows in a formula, it defaults to selecting all of the merged cells. Merging cells also can create problems when you sort data, so it's best to not merge cells when you can. And there's actually a way to get around that so you can visually do the same thing. If you click this alignment button, there's this horizontal alignment option right here, and there are several options that you can play around with. But this option right here, center across selection, is really handy because what it does is it basically does the same thing as the merge and center, but it just keeps the data in cell A1, but then centers it across A through E. Now when we do that sum formula again, it doesn't select A through E. So if you want to keep your spreadsheets a little cleaner, use the center across selection. As far as numbers go, this number section is really useful. So we'll select our numbers in our table here. You can click down on this drop down and change to some common number formats. There are also these buttons to change to currency, percentage, which we wouldn't want in this case, decimal, and then these buttons where you can decrease your decimal or increase your decimal. Let's change this to dollars and decrease the decimal. So those are your basic formatting options on the home ribbon. You can click these little squares at the bottom of each section to bring up the format cells dialog box, and specifically the format cells for that section. So we clicked on the font box and it brought up even more options for our font. I already showed you the alignment box as well. And this number box gets you a lot of options for numbers. In formatting with numbers, we've got these dates here, and there are a few tricks with formatting dates. So if you click this drop down, you can see a short date or a long date. But clicking this box around the number gets you even more options. There are these pre-populated date formats. So depending on what you're wanting to show, you can select one of those. You can also come to this custom section and create your own date format based on using the letter M, D, and Y. So here in this sample section, it'll show us a preview of what we're doing. If you want to show the month number, just type 1M. If you want to show the month number with a leading zero, you would type MM. And then if you want to convert this to a text description, MM will show the abbreviated month name, and then 4 M's will show the complete month name. A similar thing happens with the days. If you press D once, it will show you the numerical date without a leading zero. DD will show with a leading zero. Obviously, there's no leading zero in this case. If you type 3 Ds, it'll show you the abbreviated day name, and 4 Ds will show you the full day name. And then years are the same way. Typing Y or YY will give you the last 2 digits, and 3 or 4 will give you the full year. So let's say for our example here, what we want is the abbreviated month name with a dash and then the year like that. Click OK. And now we have a pretty good table. We'll bold those items as well. You'll notice that there are these green triangles in the corner of some of these. And what this is it's flagging it as a potential formula error. When you click down on here, it says the formula omits adjacent cells. If you said update the formula, what it's going to do is it's going to include the date up here, which we don't want. So we can ignore that. You can actually select these and then ignore the error altogether. And so let's say that this is a good format that we wanted. If we wanted to apply the same format to the other tables of data, you could go in and do the exact same thing that we did for this table, or you could use the Format Painter button on the home ribbon. What the Format Painter button does is it basically copies the formatting of any selected cells, and then you can click somewhere else in your spreadsheet and apply that same formatting. So let's select all of these cells right here and click the Format Painter, and then we will click these cells right here, making sure that we want to start with that revenue line, and now it's changed all of the formatting to match. You'll notice that the default is to have the Format Painter only work once. If we undo that and select this again, you can double click the Format Painter and then it will keep working until you press the Format Painter button again or you press Escape. One other way to copy formatting that some people like to use, you can select these cells, do a Control-C for copy, come to this row right here, and just paste the formatting only. You'll notice that didn't change any of the numbers, it just changed the formatting. And we can do the same thing right here. So a couple ways to copy over the formatting. Obviously, there are a lot of different ways to format your data that we didn't go over, but just click around into these boxes to see more options and figure out what you want to see. You can use the Control-1 shortcut to bring up this Format Cells box, which basically has everything that you could need. We've gone over several of these, like the number, alignment, and font, and border as well. There's also this option for fill. So this gets you some more options with filling our cells. You can select a color. You can even select a pattern. So if you wanted to do a green box like that, you could do that. I can't think of an instance where you would want to do that, but you could. Hit Control-1 again. You can select fill effects and use gradients as well, which could look kind of cool. And then this last tab over here is the protection settings, where you can protect or unprotect a cell. One other thing to note, if you wanted to remove formatting from cells, pressing the delete key will delete data, but it won't delete formatting. So you can come to the home tab of the ribbon and select this clear option. You can clear all, which basically means clear everything, including data and formatting, comments, etc. Just clear the formats, contents, comments and notes, or hyperlinks. So if we wanted to get rid of that gradient that we just added, we could just clear the formats. If you wanted to get rid of all of the data, you could clear all. We'll undo that though. And that's your basic formatting in Excel.